58%. That is the percentage of Detroit school students who are chronically absent. Chronically absent means that a student has missed 10% of the school days in the school year. The state of Michigan mandates that each school district provide at least 180 days of instruction. That means if a student misses at least 18 days of school, they're considered chronically absent. We hear stats like this all the time, highlighting the problems that Detroit Public School faces now and moving forward. We hear about low graduation rates, the legacy of school segregation here in Michigan, low test scores. We hear about poverty, declining population, and the legacy of white flight. Now, all of these things are definitely true, but the one thing we never seem to really think about and question is what are our school systems here in Detroit preparing students for? Are we preparing students for a 21st century career, or are we stuck in old, outdated models of economics and in job placement? Before we go into details about that, I think it's extremely important to briefly highlight the history of Detroit Public Schools so that we can have a better understanding of just why and how Detroit Public Schools came to be. In 1827, Michigan creates a law requiring that every town with at least 50 residents creates at least one school. Just 15 years later, in 1842, the Detroit Board of Education is created, thus creating what we now know as the Detroit Public School System. These schools were run by individuals and churches and provided a very basic form of education. Between 1842 and 1900, the school district grows from roughly a little bit over 2,000 students to well over 39,000 students by the turn of the century. With the growth and expansion of the automobile industry and the population of Detroit, the school will reach its peak enrollment of nearly 300,000 students by the year 1966. In the 51 years since Detroit Public Schools' peak enrollment, we have seen massive population loss in the city, tons of school closings, and increased competition from charter schools and neighboring school districts here in Michigan. The decline of Detroit Public Schools mirrored the decline of the automobile industry in the city of Detroit. In the next section, I will discuss how it got to this point and what the future of Detroit Public Schools may look like. For the majority of Detroit Public Schools history, there were too many students and not enough schools. However, over the past 30 years, there have been too many schools and not enough students. This decline in student population was driven by white flight in the 1960s and the 1970s, and an increase in African Americans moving into the suburbs in the 1980s, 1990s, and the 2000s. The 1990s also brought competition from charter schools and schools of choice, which created bigger losses for Detroit Public Schools. These huge losses in student population led to poorly planned school closings. This instability has led to huge money problems and the increase in poor performing schools. With all the future challenges facing the city of Detroit, Detroit Public School is perhaps the biggest challenge, and is very important in order to get people to come here, live here, and stay here. When I first did this project, I was really interested in curriculum, but after a while I realized that, the biggest thing here was really class and race. And while a lot of things can be hidden, as far as wealth, I think education becomes a physical representation of class and race, and also discrimination based on class and race. And one thing I realized is that the Detroit Public School System really continues that legacy of class and race here in the city that's been so polarizing between the city and the surrounding suburbs. So really when I think about Detroit Public Schools, I just really see the legacy of hundreds of years of racism here in America and how that impacted the development of the city of Detroit over the past 50 to 75 years. And that's my final thought.